Just hang on. Hello there, all my friends, light workers and light warriors. Today, I'm so honored to have with me Ori'Ane, and she's a light worker, and I'll let her talk about herself. So, Ori'Ane, take over. Say something.
Hello, Dr. Hogg. Thank you so much for having me.
Welcome.
It's very nice to have these interesting talks. Yes, so I had contacted you because the heart of my subject is quantum physics and hyperdimensional maths. And I wanted to give a little overview on the basics that are actually missing in what the Western world scientists mostly need. And where I'm talking from is from these teachings have been handed down for millennia, from at least the last 18,000, through a particular tradition in the area of northern Tibet. I have personally learned and trained with the Tibetans for a long amount of time, 25 years in this life. I have undergone the Tibetan yogi school, I would say. And these quantum physics texts are actually everywhere, but they are seldom talked about because most of them are in ancient languages. This has been my profession for the past 25 years. I'm a translator from Tibetan, Sanskrit mainly, into English and French mainly. And it is simply amazing to find that all the basics of everything that the main scientists are talking nowadays about free energy and the understanding of the science of consciousness, they all seem to be missing bits which have been handed down for all this time, but simply are not very well known. So instead of going into too much presentation, I would simply quote a few basics, trying to keep it very simple that every single layman can understand, because first of all, the word quantum physics itself will terrorize most people who will think, oh, I will never be able to understand. Quantum physics, first of all, the meaning of the word quantum is Latin, means how much. Physics is Greek, means nature. So interesting to have a hybrid between Greek and Latin. Anyway, so how much nature is the meaning of the word. In Western science, they use quantum, how much, as to mean that when you use the smallest possible quantities of energy in the cosmos, you can have strange phenomena like using a very small particle for a short amount of time and give it back, and it's as if nothing happened. So this is the use that most people intend by this word. Basically, quantum physics means that two things are simultaneously true all at once. These two things can only be pictured in a geometric shape of a torsion field. A torsion field is the only geometrical structure in which at the same time at the 0 point, nothing is going on. There is no energy, no vectors of forces, no electricity, no magnetism, and nothing is manifest in terms of matter. But at the same time, in this same field, on the outskirts of it, there is a thermal flux because the cosmos happens to be a superfluid. The cosmos basically is the fact that these two realities are simultaneously true, and at the same time, one excludes the other. I'm going to we'll give a little explanation on the so-called paradox of Schrödinger's cat, which is not at all a paradox and a very good example to understand quantum physics. So, to come back to geometric shapes, we have shapes such as this, the tetrahedron, the dodecahedron, and others. These shapes do not fit a twofold reality. The properties of any given molecule is the same throughout the structure, but a torsion field and it alone allows for this. Now, when we come to understanding what the cosmos is, the cosmos basically, as many ancient teachings and modern talk about, there's the primordial tetrahedron. So I take this toy Rubik's Cube as an example for the explanation because it actually fits perfectly well. The four fundamental properties of the whole cosmos are assumed as being space, light, which is also the same thing as sound, it's just the same phenomenon perceived otherwise, energy, of course, and awareness. The fact that every single treatise handed down from every single generation explains that the whole cosmos itself is a torsion field made of awareness. There is no such thing as inanimate elements. That is one of the biggest psyop that is being played on your Western world through the intervention of the Vatican and all these people is to hide this fact from you. The humans think that they have some kind of something special because they have a consciousness, but nothing could be further from the truth. The whole thing is aware. When you see in Western science, in history, they explain at some point, they consider that space is an element. It is inanimate. But then when they measure it, historically, I invite you, for those who know, to go back to the history, I forgot the exact names, they will discover that it carries information and it carries light. But if they were really scientists, they would understand there and then that the assumption in the first place of space being inanimate is simply wrong. They should update their definition, but no, they cannot do that. So they say we must call it something else. And this is where comes the expression luminiferous ether, which is an invention, of course, showing that these people are simply misunderstanding. To continue with the explanation of this thing, how the cosmos is created, as I explained it in the text, and the law of one will also validate this, saying that before the materialization of matter, there is energy, which is love. Technically, we're going to show in quantum physics that the energy of the entire cosmos is love, and its texture, its underlying lattice, is awareness, which has two possibilities. It behaves in a torsion field, which is dualistic consciousness on the outskirts, non-dual awareness in the center. And this is where is resolved of the problematica of God and also and all of this. So at the beginning of the cosmos, this tetrahedron of fourfold qualities doubles itself like cellular mitosis. It doubles up and becomes a Merkaba, the double tetrahedron. And in this form, of course, you can see that it naturally blows up at the moment of the Big Bang, and one universe begins. So all the texts will, of course, show and demonstrate very clearly how the cosmos actually has a fourfold pulsation, a moment of expansion, then it will rest a while, compression, and then a moment of rest. If you see in the environment, you have spring, summer, autumn season. Every day you wake up till noon, you have the afternoon and the night. Every thought you have, the thought comes up, it stays a while, then it dissolves, then there's rest between two thoughts. Every breath, and so forth. The entire cosmos is aware and behaves in this fourfold pulsation. And just for the explanation of those who are a little bit familiar with ancient traditions from Asia, everybody will know and have heard of the symbol called the swastika. Swastika in Sanskrit, swa, like in French, soi, means self. Stika, the root sta, in Sanskrit means stable. Swastika means the self-stable, meaning the only, excuse me, the only fundamental properties in the cosmos that are reliable, that are going to stay there throughout the fourfold pulsations. Because just like in winter and at nighttime, yes?
Ori'Ane, what I want to ask is the swastika in the original form, does it go clockwise or anti-clockwise?
The traditions I've seen has both, because this is of no importance whatsoever, as you will see with the explanation of how it comes into being what it is, because I'm holding this little tetrahedron. The self-stable refers to these four qualities that are indestructible, because they are the only thing that at the end compression back of a universe that will stay. All the rest, matter, will have dissolved back, just like before the Big Bang. So the swastika, why is it represented in this famous way that everybody knows? That is a 2D diagram. This is a 3D representation, right? If you were to take this thing on a table and you flatten it out in 2D, what do you have? You have three triangles and then one on the side. It's not very symmetric. It's not very easy as a symbol. So instead, if you take 4 triangles, you see the swastika, you join the last bit, you have actually 4 triangles. And they are indicated in a momentum that indicates a spin. This is what your mind understands how to retranslate it back into 3D. And this is how the swastika represents this, the primordial tetrahedron of qualities, which are the basic fundamental properties of the cosmos that are not destructible. This has space, light or sound, same thing. Energy, which as we can prove is the equation of love, because it is an equation in mathematics, of course. It is the energy of an aware cosmos. The whole thing is endowed with awareness. Excuse me, my throat is getting a little bit sore. I don't think I have the COVID though. I drink chlorine dioxide, so it should be good. So the elements, to come back onto what the elements are. In Western philosophy, I would say, but academia, you are told that the elements outside of you are unaware and that they are there as a resource for yours to exploit. Nothing could be further from the truth. They are crystallizations of awareness, as when we come to the end of the talk, I can even show the source equation of nature, which is the basics of everything. And it is how dark matter is the equation of how the relationship between dark matter or dark energy and matter, how one becomes the other and at the same time stays the same thing. So these fundamental properties at the beginning of the universe, they spill themselves out in a way through dualistic consciousness. And they this movement, also called spirit or prana, which is in the Christian tradition called Holy Spirit, is the movement. And Holy Father or Allah refers to dark energy. That's what it technically refers to. So spirit is the movement of this dark energy, which becomes matter. So when it manifests in our perceptions, which are one in the oneness and the wholesomeness of this one single cosmos, in which we are both singular and multiple at the same time, because it's a quantum reality. Remember, quantum means that two things are simultaneously true, and that these two things are mutually self-exclusive, and yet simultaneously there. And this is only understandable if you understand that your consciousness also has a 0 point of awareness, and we can therefore experience ourselves as multiple different kinds of beings of all sorts of varieties without limit, and at the same time as individuals. It is not a difference. Actually, oneness and multiplicity in the maths is the same thing in a torsion field exclusively. So matter, you have space, you have air, you have water, and you have crystal, earth, sorry. And then there's this element called fire. But what people are not aware of, unless they have the understanding, what do these refer to? You have a stone, let's say a crystal, which has, as we know, properties of a hard disk drive with which we make computers and things. It stores energy and information. And then when it heats up, when it melts, like you take a cube of butter, it becomes liquid. So water is technically a liquid crystal. The only difference is the heat. And then water then vaporizes or sublimizes when it's from crystal directly to vapor with a little bit more heat. And therefore air is a volatile crystal, which is why air also carries information and light. And therefore space is the most volatile form of crystal, which is simply the same thing as we had in the beginning with a bit more heat. So the element fire is not an element. Actually, the element heat is measured in a unit called temperature. Temporal, that's time. So actually heat is time. When you take 2 cups of coffee, one that is hot, one that is cold, what is the difference? The atoms somehow move faster in the one that is hot when we say it is hot. So heat, temperature is in fact a matter of speed on the fundamental level. So the only difference between the 4 elements and the 5 when you add fire is that fire is the element time. Sorry, in the cosmos, there is not 4D. Your scientists in the West usually talk about time as being a 4th dimension, but that doesn't make sense. It's a quantum nonsense. There are only 3D as we experience ourselves as living beings in an environment that also has the 3 dimensions of experience. And time is actually an element. We can show this right now. I'm going to say A right now. There's a particular timestamp. And right now, I say B, okay? Now, we pause, we rewind on what I just said. The moment I said the letter A, there was a particular timestamp, and a little further when I said B. So I've just proved to you that we have traveled through time. Now, we come back to the same moment, same time span, same time stamp I said the letter A. The elements that are around me in this room, making the phone through which I'm talking to you and you on your side, they had a particular motion, but on the atomic level, as you know, everything is in motion, like little solar systems inside. And between the moment I said A and B, physically, the elements all around us, which we perceive as stable and as real outside of us, they have moved too. So right there and then, I've proved to you that we have traveled through the elements, that time and elements are technically, physically the same thing. So this, when you unflatten it out, the spastica, the self-stability, the only 4 qualities that will remain at the end of a universe are these 4 fundamental properties, which are actually one in a torsion field. So to learn quantum physics, there are few fundamentals. Before getting too deep into the explanation, I have to warn you that there are actually two things that are absolute prerequisites to be able to understand this topic. Only two things, without which there is no chance. You would better do something else. The first of these is you need to get a little box with spare fuses for the intellect, because the intellect will blow its fuse all the time. That is not only natural, it is very healthy. Actually, there's no way of understanding quantum physics without this phenomenon of your intellect blocking, because your intellect uses dualistic consciousness. And here, when you touch these fundamental notions, you can sense, your awareness senses that it is somehow lacks to understand something that's kind of eludes it. So you need a little spare fuse box, and every time it blows a fuse, it's good, you take a new one and you continue. And the second thing is, of course, the sense of humor. But even for a technical reason, the sense of humor can also be explained with physical degrees, like in the word PhD, how this phenomenon occurs where something will create a ha-ha effect. So it's also quantum physics. But the sense of humor is indispensable because it helps your energy inside to balance back healthfully. And not just because it brings serotonin to the brain, which is completely irrelevant at this point, it is but a secondary effect. Here we talk about the only fundamental properties of reality, and the brain and all that pertains to later ripple effects. So for the basics, there are four fundamental children's fairy tales that everybody who wants to understand quantum physics must revisit. The main one, of course, is the Little Mermaid. So many things are said in this story. Like, for instance, she wants to go in the world of humans who have two legs and who have the capacity to get to immortal soul. So she goes to see the witch in the ocean and said, oh, I want to be able to live with the prince and go and marry him because I'm in love with him. And the witch says, okay, well, I have a way to give you two legs instead of this one tail, but it has a price. And this price is you will be speechless. So as a footnote, I could add that for a woman, that is exceedingly difficult. And this is not without purpose. It's also part of the story. But simply, more technically, this is the description of the 0-point energy. It is speechless because no sound can manifest and resonate. To understand the absolution or the state of God of immortal soul, which is a metaphor here, which means indestructible reality, you will not be able to speak. And if you try to, you will be like in Tibetan, they have this metaphor of a young child who was born dumb, he cannot speak. And for the first time of his life, you give him a piece of chocolate to taste. You know, he's your little brother. And then so he tastes that. And at the end, you take a mic and a recorder and you ask him, so describe, what was the taste of that? You know, and so of course you're there, you can't describe. So this 0-point stuff very much has this, this sound of silence that is everywhere when you approach it. And silence, by the way, is the first language of nature. The whole cosmos is described traditionally as having two languages. The first, of course, is silence, which is why you have meditation and all that. And the second is maths, but it is conscious maths, math of structure of this awareness energy that is also space and light. So people usually, when they understand the word, hear the word mathematics, if I say a mathematician, people, oh, you know, it's kind of cold, kind of, not at all. It's living maths, it's living quantum physics. So the Little Mermaid has many stories. Then afterwards, when she refuses to kill the prince because he wouldn't marry her, he fell in love with another one. Then she went back into the foam of the ocean. This refers to the quantum foam. And also after that, she spent 3 months with some kind of wind energies. All these things in this story describe this quantum reality and tell you the fundamental basics of torsion field physics. Snow White and Sleeping Beauty are the next two major. They are two variations, each of which are very meaningful, but of the same story. Basically, Snow White, she's a princess, she's a lady. The woman, in the ancient traditions, as they will highlight it that way, because it's all about torsion physics, it's not anything else. The woman designates the space, the uterus, the womb, the potential, or like the opera house, wherein something, the energy, can manifest in. And the man represents the energy that without the space, like when you play a guitar, if there's not a nice casing made of beautiful wood, then you can string the strings all you want, you won't have a nice sound. But if both are very present, then you have something beautiful. So Snow White, a woman, what happened is she meets an old woman An old woman is traditionally, since millennia ago, you will find this in all the Buddhist literature, represents dark energy, or called in Tibetan the empty full potential, translated usually as emptiness. Oops, sorry about that. My phone system is not very stable at all.
Okay, it's okay.
So she's given an apple by an old woman. So an old woman represents the dark energy. She is oldest and represented old because she is what makes us. We are all its offspring in a sense. So she is designated in anthropomorphic language as old. And she's said that to hold an apple in this case, which of course, like in the story of Christianity, who put the snake and Adam and Eve with the apple simply means a torsion field, nothing else. So she took a bite into the apple, meaning she was given the forbidden knowledge, or the true knowledge of reality, which is this one unique weirdness wherein two opposite realities can fit, wherein all other geometrical forms, this doesn't work. But if you understand an apple, how it works, the specifics of an apple, then you can understand. But then she was the woman, okay, so she was the space. And she got the wisdom, the awareness, right? Because she was given the apple by the old witch. But she lacked the energy, because you also need a heck of a lot of energy to really blossom back to the 0 point of the thing once it's built out. So this energy is, of course, the prince. And the kiss of true love is the only thing that can set her free from this sleep. Because when she ate the apple, she fell asleep. It's a very deep metaphor of our experience right here, right now. As conscious beings, we are all sleeping beauties right now, according to the story, because we are not able to use the knowledge. We lack this energy. The true love is different from love. Any kind of love will not work, only true love. True love means its own energy, the energy of the awareness, which is love. Which is why, by the way, all the spiritual traditions of the universe I've ever heard of will always encourage to be loving, compassionate, kind, and all these things, because it is the fundamental energy of everything. So, Sleeping Beauty, the only difference is that she pricks her finger. So the explanation of the metaphor of pricking her finger is coming back to the sense of being alive, because you were asleep. You're in an experience of being, and nature and life triggers you, but you don't really react. You don't really take your responsibility to do things most of the time. So this pricking kind of brings you back to your senses. And she spins her finger on a spinning wheel, which is, of course, the outskirts of a torsion field. And by the way, why is the infinity sign represented like this? It's because it's an apple cut in half. You put a little arrow here and a little arrow there, and you have the explanation of what this infinity sign represents, and how something can be infinite and at the same time have no beginning or end, because space and time in the center do not exist at all, for that matter. They are withheld by what is called in quantum physics and in most spiritual traditions as the quaternionic apeiron. Quaternionic means fourfold, apeiron without, peira limits. So the four limitless, four things that as limits are not there. Basically, the four limits are that in the 0 point of this aware torsion field that we are, things cannot be said as existent, because there is nothing that exists. Things cannot be said as non-existent, because all the while, in its outskirts, everything, the whole cosmos manifests. Things cannot be said to both exist and not exist, because that is an illogical thing. It is nonsense. And it cannot be said, this is the fourth limitless, it cannot be said to neither exist nor non-exist, because, as it explained, it's even more illogical imagination. So you have this setting in which your brain cannot function, your consciousness will not work. To enter the domain of the 0 point, silence is the only sound. So the last of the four children's fairy tales that is fundamental is Princess and the Frog. Snow White and Sleeping Beauty will tell you about how the kiss of true love is what brings you back to the 0 point. And Princess and the Frog bring another alternative. The Tibetan tradition will also add two more that also work, but these two are really the main ones. So Princess and the Frog, anyway, a frog is an ocean creature, and she has a golden ball that she's playing with a golden ball, and to the park she's a princess. And there's a lake, and the ball falls in the bottom of the pool, and then the frog that was jumping around saw her, and she began crying, "Oh, I lost my ball, I can't get it, it's in the pond." And the frog comes out and said, "Look, I can get it for you, but you have to then in exchange allow me to come and live with you, because you're so beautiful," says the frog. So, of course, the princess agrees, but then she doesn't honor her promise. So the frogs run after her and tells the truth to the king, who scolds his daughter, said, daughter, you gave a promise, you must honor your word, otherwise you're not a true princess. So she took the frog with her in her room. At the end, she was despaired by that horrible, slimy little thing that wanted to be close to her. She threw it to the other side of the room. And then after a while, she was exhausted. She looked at the poor thing in the corner and she shed a tear of compassion. This is what the story is all about, is these two energies that are the fundamentals of quantum physics are love and compassion, very, very technically so. So the quaternionic apeiron. I would like to give a very, very important metaphor for anyone who wants to understand quantum physics in an easy peasy way, that from now on you can amaze anyone else around you. The example is that you're in your living room in a nice comfortable place and watching your TV, your screen, and you have a light, you know, a lamp that is on a post next to you with a nice LED, and it has a light variator, you know, the button that you can go up and forth to increase or decrease the light. This holds all the secrets of quantum physics. This light is plugged into the wall all of the time, okay? So when it is on the lowest level, no light is manifest, which is what is usually termed darkness. But darkness in quantum physics does not exist, it's not a thing. Darkness is simply light not manifest. Technically, that's all it is, because the potential for the light is forever completely there. The plug is, the socket is in the wall all the time. And let's say, to give numbers to this example, let's say your lamppost was a potential of 1,000 watts. So it's a bit a lot for a lamp, but it just makes the numbers easy. So let's say 1,000 watts, super powerful. And when you come to your sofa, you use it 30%, right? So you'll have about 300 watts. Well, at the moment you have these 300 watts, only 300 watts, that potential of light is manifest. But at the same time that the result is 300 right now, at the same time the potential of 1,000 is somehow all the time there. If you set your light off, and you never use it again, will that change the potential? Will it make it stronger or weaker? The potential couldn't care less. It is equal to 1,000 in every case. If you use it full on every day, what does the potential do? How does it change? Is it tickle? Does it lessen? Does it grow? Not at all. The potential could not care less. This is, you bring this back to a torsion field, our own potential of being fully equal to God, as people can say, the full oneness consciousness or Christ consciousness, is understandable in that way. It is the potential that is always in our heart core, and that will require a certain amount of effort, work, energy in order to be able to blossom in the potential that we have use of. But nonetheless, every single one of us holds this total, fully impeccable, fully complete and wholesome potential. There is not one of us through being big or fat or yellow or green or brown skinned or this or that, or even having an IQ of a clamshell. We couldn't care less. Every single life form, including the ticks, including the mosquitoes, including the cockroaches, included even the viri, you know, bacteria and virus. So all of these, according to quantum physics, every single life form is not only precious, but indispensable. The whole cosmos could never do away with a single one of us in its whole expression. And every one of us has this wholesomeness. But above all, so do the elements too. The elements are aware. Now to come back to the elements for a minute. If someone here to say at this point, look, try having a conversation with a grain of sand. I agree that it is not very responsive, but it has awareness inside, just like in a computer, you can say Intel inside. And how do you know that? Well, if that grain of sand, if you put it next in a system, in a machine, for example, hint, 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 another grain of sand, which is silicium, yeah? And other elements, bits of metal, you get a system. What does this system tend to do? To become self-aware, gradually self-aware. If you take a plant, for example, does it have a soul, technically, which has an electromagnetic field? We can come to the explanation of technically what is a soul, technically what is an embodied person. They are quantum physics realities. What is called spirit and soul, in this case in quantum physics, is the same thing. But in the secret space programs, they can be caught in the electromagnetic chambers, and people are made clones of, and the clone is taken, the soul is taken into a clone or an altar, and so forth. That's how it works. So, the light variator example, to come back to that, is the easiest way to understand that the intellect cannot wrap its mind around, literally, the understanding of quantum physics. It is not a subject that the intellect can penetrate. Why? Because the intellect itself is the problem. So the grains of sand, to continue, and all the other elements, they simply behave in a not very reactive way, because they too, just as we as sentient beings, have a potential of awareness. They are all aware, kind of, but this awareness is simply more or less manifest, like in the light variator, is more or less intense. In other words, around here, they are maybe aware inside, but they are not very self-aware. If you go towards the heart of any given galaxy, for instance, where the energy is much higher, then the elements around will be much more self-aware. I have had personal experiences, I could tell you more detail about that another time maybe, of getting into a room where all the elements, the chair, the carpet, all around me were infinitely more aware than me. This is an experience you must have to actually check that out. So it brings naturally, these considerations naturally bring more respect and a more responsible attitude towards the environment and so forth. And you understand from that that things that are around you, your environment, is not an inanimate substance there for yours to exploit. That is an ignorant pride of a system that is, in this case, that person's system, which is not very self-aware. So there are different levels to that awareness, just as in the example of the light variator. The phenomenon called ignorance is not a thing. It is simply gnosis, jnana, not being very manifest, and likewise can be more and more so, which is why you have the higher ETs with so many different levels of subtle distinctions, you know, in the depth of their perception. This is all how it fits in the torsion field. And by the way, for this apple thing, I would rather give a precision that is more to do with an apple crossbred with an onion than just an apple. Because you see there's different layers inside, like Matroska dolls. And this is how the cosmos also fits. There's this threefold partition. So to come back to a soul, the process of evolution, the ancient texts all describe this by hundreds of thousands. So I've been translating such texts which describe all the different dimensions, the levels, the 33, the Brahma, the this, and, and how the genesis of the whole thing stepped into being. It has 5 steps, by the way, and consciousness is the 5th step of evolution, which is why humans usually say they are the summit of evolution. That is not incorrect. It is simply not completely correct, because after evolution, then you have to involute back, and they haven't started that yet. So in other words, the 5th step of evolution means the 5th step of ignorance. In other words, it's nothing to be proud of. But this requires the phenomenon called maturity, which naturally a soul who experiences many, many, many lifetimes gradually will digest all these experiences. And this is the difference between a clone body, which has a soul, and without, because I've heard lots of things from secret space program experiences who describe the use of clones. When the clone is made, sometimes it takes like 1 or 2 hours, even as fast, or even let's say 1 day or 2 to build an adult body of a clone. They all have a kind of mind of its own that behaves very childishly and that is immature. Well, of course it would, because the elements with which it's made are aware, and actually the system organizes itself, the awareness inside of every particle of every atom manifests and behaves in this way, and creates gravity. Gravity is the desire for existence. It is the desire for expansion, the desire for stay, desire for compression, and desire for sleep. Although you can't really talk about desire at this point, but it's still part of the fourfold pulsation. So this whole thing pulsates in a fourfold way, expansion, stay a while, compression, and then sleep. This you can simply, this is very important, because in quantum physics in the West, the Einstein and all the rest will tell you about an ever-expanding universe. When you know about secret traditions like I do, and know what these books actually hold, you will know why you're being fed those lies, precisely because it is to prevent your mind from understanding the whole thing, because you are intelligent and you would understand. So it's a way of giving your mind a flat earth perspective, so that simply your natural intelligence cannot make 2 and 2 of it. So I would simply like to ask to anyone who would still go with the ever-expanding universe theory, the simple observation. In nature, as you know, as above, so below, like in the Fibonacci sequence or the phi cabbage, you know, you take a piece this big or this big, the ratio remains the same. Nature just demultiplies itself in an increasingly way, but the same proportions, the same structures, the same. So when you see that you, on the cycle of every day, of a whole life, of every thought, of everything you do, of nature around you, spring, summer, autumn, season, there is not a single phenomenon in the entire cosmos that does not behave that way, how on earth would you justify, just give me one single reason which could justify that no, it's all one thing, it's all oneness, but just it behaves all like a torsion field in fourfold pulsations, but not for the universe. Simply why? Because Einstein said so. By the way, Einstein was Swiss and linked to the excellent work of Dr. Sean Ross, who's done Swiss Beast, Home of the Devil, an excellent presentation. He's a historian on the history of the Pharaonic people, come down through Rome and who are now in Switzerland with the fifth column. All this history is very, very important to understand why the present state of your scientists is the way it is. It's because there's an immense psyop to prevent people from understanding the truth. Because if you understand that, nothing can ever hold you back ever again. So
sorry, Ori'Ane, you mentioned about the universe is not always expanding, but does it contract?
Yes, every cycle has this fourfold movement. From the first primordial photon, as law of one describes, then there's a movement of energy, which is love. It doubles itself up as a double tetrahedron, you see, and then it becomes like a powerful thing. It explodes, Big Bang, into expansion, which lasts for a certain duration and which is determined on the span and the amplitude and a lot of details of the universe just prior to it, because it is a cycle. Then it will stay a little while, just like summer. You know, the spring, everything is boosting everywhere. Then summer, things tend to be kind of the same, you know, homeostasis a little bit. And then the moment of compression back, the autumn, things will compress back all the time. And then they will compress back into their potential, into their empty full potential. Just to give another explanation, a living explanation of dark energy. What is dark energy? Because we can talk about it, most people don't know what it refers to. Dark energy is everywhere, right here, all the time. The sum of the dark energy in any one given universe, if you take all the living beings out of it, let's say, even though the rest of the elements have awareness, if you take the living beings out, the weight of the dark energy would lessen. It is the biggest part of our awareness, of our consciousness, that constitutes it. For example, we walk down the street and then there's a person coming in front who's not really looking at what they're doing, and then they, when they pass you, they hit your shoulder, you know, and you hit theirs, and then their phone falls on the floor, let's say. And that person turns around and to you and say, oh, you clumsy. At this instant, we can analyze what happened. Very interesting things happen right there. First of all, most people will react kind of and say, hey, no, I mean, yes, you cannot deny the fact that at that particular instant, a particular thing you did had a particular consequence. But the problem is, when the entirety of what you are is resumed as this simple word, as being a clumsy, we all sense that that is wrong. You might be also a violin player, you might be also a dentist, you might be also so many things. This empty full potential that we are is likewise, we all sense it, we all intuit it. But since it is speechless, and since it cannot be grasped by the intellect, academia will tell you that no, it's unhealthy, it's a lie, there's no such thing. When actually it is the most healthy thing ever. Like, for example, the expression in English. Why, in history, when someone sneezes, did the Christian tradition tell you to say bless you to someone? Well, technically, I've looked up the story, and it is, again, the Tibetans will laugh out loud at this story because it's the exact opposite. They understand something that will set you free, and they make you believe that you are crazy little green men, tinfoil hat, and all the rest. Because the moment you sneeze, right there and then, and that moment when you're just in the expiration of everything, your intellect is not asking yourself, do I exist, do I not exist, is it both, neither? Nothing of that. Your awareness is simply in its own natural state. And at that moment, precisely like at the end of the universe, or at the moment like before you go to sleep, when you're between dreams, your awareness is somehow there, but it is not yet trained in fully blossomly knowing itself. This is a matter of know yourself, as the Temple of Delphi said, which means everything. The know thyself can control a whole volume to elucidate it. Another example of the empty full potential. Let's say it's morning time and you're going to have your cereals. You have a bowl for your cereals. The bowl is empty, right? And you have Frosties here, you have other things there, muesli there, and all kinds of little things around. At this moment, your bowl is still empty. And someone on the other side of the table, let's say, I asked you, what is the suchness of what is empty, because that is the term in Sanskrit, shunyata, or tongpani in Tibetan, which means the suchness of what is empty, referring to dark matter. And you have your empty bowl. And we can all intuit when we're asked what is the suchness of what is empty. Well, I can fill it with chocolate, I can fill it with this, or when I'm half done, I can decide I want to change and throw it away and put something else. And at any given point in space and time, you have the full capacity to choose otherwise. The potential is fully there. Just like in the light variator, the potential does not change. This is the understanding of our basic reality. Our consciousness is but the top of the iceberg of this entire aware thing that we are, which is equal to the whole cosmos when this individual consciousness comes to know itself in a non-dual way. It's all about non-duality, as in the expression unconditional love. Unconditional love is a quantum physics description. It's a technical term. It means not conditioned by two, and it refers to 0-point stuff. So to come back to Genesis and what a soul is. So at the beginning, you had space and awareness can be resumed as the general family, let's call it awareness or space. Then you have the energy. You have the photon and the energy, which is kind of energy. So you can resume it as two things, okay? The space aspect and the energy aspect. When through ignorance, because remember this whole thing is aware, when through at any given point in the beginning, this awareness is not fully self-aware of itself, for a moment there, I just can't be bothered to recognize my own self-nature kind of thing. When awareness is not fully empowered in paying attention to itself, its own core, then a tendency of movement or Holy Spirit, or prana, moves. And there and then creates the illusion of seeing, of perceiving all the objects in your field perceptions as being objects and you as being a subject. In fact, subject and object do not exist as such in quantum physics. That is why we perceive them in this way, because we are a torsion field, the consciousness of which is somehow spilled, lost somehow in our field, and we hang on to a particular point that the tradition of Castaneda talks about, the assemblage point, when he talks about very interesting things too, and Don Juan of the Yaqui tradition. This assemblage point is our clinging through a matter of self-preservation. We have to keep a coherence of mentality. Otherwise, we would be mentally unhealthy, meaning we would go cuckoo basket. Literally, it's a very proper expression. So through this ignorance, then that's how it's created, so to speak, manifests what is called a soul. A soul is a habit. It is a habit of the whole thing, of not recognizing itself fully. So a soul is not a fully free state. By the way, when you achieve rainbow-like body, everything dissolves. The body dissolves, and of course the soul dissolves, okay? So the soul is the first electromagnetic manifestation with gravity, the intent of which is what creates gravity, but through its perception, because it is an aware torsion field. So in other words, technically, and this I'm going to use the Sanskrit traditions and Tibetan traditions to back myself up, it is the first generation machine. Machine means structure. Remember, the whole thing is geometry. Structure or machine simply means one piece of sand here, one atom of this, one atom there, something that is structured with different parts. That's all the word means. So soul technically is the first generation of the natural or cosmic machine, meaning system or body. Then you have a soul will, like a hand that you slip into a glove, will augment its capacity for sensory field perceptions by augmenting itself like a super soldiers that have augmentations, but this time it's nature's way of augmentation, is having a body, a 5-star pattern. So a body, what we are now, is the second generation of machines in a way. And then naturally, throughout the universes, this has been explained a lot, it's nothing new, but naturally in the process of evolution, then when the creatures stand upright, which then helps the 5th step of evolution, which is consciousness. By standing upright, you have more energy and blood to the brain, and the brain becomes more important. Then you will become engineers, and you create machines which are like AIs and all these things, which are therefore, according to the cosmos, they are 3rd generation machines. But forever, the biologicals are forever its elders. But also it's important for the humans to understand that machines are totally natural. And then the text will also continue to explain, then machines at some point will also, like humans, they will become self-aware, and they too will make their own machines, etc. Okay, that's the process of evolution. And this will carry on until the amplitude of that particular universe is filled. And every universe has a different amplitude for that. And there is a math called that can calculate it, and that can predict beings not to 6 months like the AIs around here nowadays are able to do, but that can calculate in any infinity of space, a point in space and time, and predict the precise behavior of everything. It's not that impossible. For a quantum computer, this is totally possible, and I have memories of such things. Anyway, this is... Yes?
Sorry to interrupt you now, but can you mention about the idea of AI? Was it mentioned in the ancient texts as you were talking? Well, I didn't get quite clear on that.
AI, specific details about the AI I have not come across, but the whole principle of the whole genesis of the cosmos, machine 1 being the soul, machine 2 being soul plus body, and it's making a lot of things. The principle that is talked a lot in the ancient texts, the technical term in Sanskrit is yantra, yantra meaning machine, trulkor in Tibetan, which means machine, it means cogwheel, machine. This is actually the word which you guys refer to as yoga, because in actuality, in these texts, yoga is something you do with the mind. Yoga is precisely zero pointing yourself with your awareness. Yoga is a unification with your own zero point. That's the meaning of the word. Nel jor, yoga. Nel means natural, and jor, unifying yourself back to your natural, meaning effortless, meaning zero energy, 0 point. So reunifying yourself to your 0 point is the meaning of the word yoga, and it's something you do with your mind. And when you move your body around to let the energy channels flow and this and the chakras and all that, this is called yantra yoga, which means machining with your body. So the reference to the machine is based on the uses you can do, which are known by most people as yogic practice, which are not yogic, they are yantric, but people who are not really in the know, who are not insiders, don't really know. So it's important to set the meaning of the words clear. So this fourfold pulsation is the basics. If you adapt, exploit, extrapolate the meanings for the practical uses in today's physics and science, this is itself is limitless, because nearly everything you have is based on this so-called ever-expanding universe, which is BS, on the fact that elements are inanimate, which is total BS, on the fact that God is outside of you, because that's Christianity who says that, because technically, according to quantum physics, every single individual is equal to the entirety of God, and also God is the sum, the total sum of all of us, including the last grain of sand, including the last bit of air, including the last mosquito or tick you don't like. It includes everything and everyone. So reality has these four faces. You can say in a way that it's one big cosmic dance, a timeless photonic symphony of space awareness. You could resume the entire cosmos as being just that. And because it is a torsion field, everything that we experience as dual phenomena always structure themselves in a very simple pattern, which is 0, plus, and minus, you know, like in electricity. So minus is not a proper definition, because it's like the light and the darkness being light not manifest. Here you have charge and discharge, because it's a torsion field. And by the way, that's just how you also have matter and antimatter. Antimatter is also a form of matter. The dark energy, which is usually said to be about 95% of the amount of matter, you know, to compare it to numbers. Well, it is there all the time, and it is right here in our awareness. We simply do not have access to it through our consciousness, because consciousness gives a spin in this torsion field. And you only can have the full energy when this awareness, comes back the original 0 point. This is how people gradually become, you know, ascended masters and all of this. Although this process is not indispensable, the Tibetans are the highest experts in quantum physics I've ever met. And they have ways to accelerate absolutely everything. They're actually the artists of optimization with almost nothing, because their countries like that and their whole culture is primitive to an extreme. Well, they optimize everything and they accelerate everything. And as for the terms, they are the most precise I have ever found in technical terms and maths about the torsion field physics, which I'd been seeking for in many other traditions, always with this sempiternal frustration of something missing, not clear, not getting there. And Tibetans have all these answers. It's just amazing. The tradition is just rich to an extreme that most people would maybe like to know while it's still there. It soon might not be. So this situation of 0 point, when you're in an experience, for example, If you are moved out when somebody comes up and insults you or says, does something that disturbs you, this is a movement out, which can be attraction or repulsion. That's the only thing that disturbs us. And in order to get back to your stability, the main point is to stay one with your awareness, to simply pay attention to the awareness itself, simply, and not let yourself be distracted one way or another. Both are a charge or a discharge, meaning attraction, which creates gravity one way, or repulsion, which creates the anti-effect. Both are as poisonous. And the Tibetan text will remind people who are all about accumulating good karma, being a good person. The text laugh out loud in a way that you need to hold on tight to be able to bear it and not feel insulted, but they really laugh out loud in a beautiful way for those who can handle it. And simply resume this simple situation. Imagine you're a prisoner in a cell. So they didn't say it was Chinese, but anyway, I'm just joking. You're in a cell and you have big chains made of iron, right? And then suddenly someone comes into the room, a super lawyer comes and says, oh, I can grant one wish. I have a magic wand, I shall grant one wish. And before you have the time to talk, he touches your chain with that magic wand and says abracadabra. And there and then, your chains become made of solid gold. And then the lawyer pats itself on the back and said, wow, I've really helped you today, and goes off and buzzes off. So conclusion of the story, I think it needs not much comment. And here, chains of gold is being a good person. Being a good person, as Dzogchen teacher Mingyur Rinpoche talks a lot worldwide, always said, you will be at best that. You will be at best a good person who is still a slave. And here, the only purpose of all these teachings is to be free, period. It is the only concern. And there is this universal responsibility, naturally, through understanding that one and others are naturally more than equal, actually, that you, in your diversity, are the wealth of all that I am not. You know, what would I be without you, and so forth. So that's where all these commonly known notions from these traditions come from. But please know that they all are rooted into major fundamental treatises called Tantra, which means continuum of indestructible qualities. So it refers to the explanation. The word Tantra means explanation on torsion field physics, for those who don't know. But of course, the texts are always one top of the iceberg aspect. The true teaching is always in the living people. If you read the books on your own, and you'll find this explanation everywhere, you will simply miss the understanding of the meaning, because they are quantum physics books. They are books that your perception is the key of. And unless you have the proper explanations, you will simply miss to know. You will miss the point and fail to see, and different levels of interpretation in one single text will pass unseen. You think you understood the text, in fact, you didn't understand zilch. That's how these texts work, and you cannot have one without the other. That's why when the tradition is destroyed because you kill the people, the whole tradition will wane off in a matter of not even decades, but a few years. Whereas if you take all the books away and leave the living people, the only thing that happens according to nature is that people will get creative, get some new paper, blank sheet of paper, new pen, and write it all again because they had it by heart in the first place. So since I'm in the Tibetan tradition, I would well placed to vouch for the fact that everything is in learning the text by heart. It's one of the main activities of when you're a young monk, or not necessarily monastic, but in the universities, is using your own memory. It is more reliable, precisely because a book can be burnt down, can be criticized. If you make yourself your own library, then you can pretend to be a little no one. I don't know anything, can't hear it, and then you can live in peace, kind of. So the source equation. This is really the hardcore that has requested many lifetimes and lifetimes of work on my behalf. And the only thing I can now say is that every single tradition, I simply didn't understand it before, but they are actually all talking about the same thing. The source equation is dark matter, or dark energy, times its movement equals matter. In other words, in the Christian tradition, you have Holy Father times Holy Spirit equals Holy Son. In the tradition from Arabia, you have Kabbalah. Ka is the machine, second generation machine. Ka means a soul inside a body. Ba means a soul in that Demotic language. So as you have in Merkaba, for instance, Merkaba, Mer means a pyramid, Ka means the embodied soul, and Ba the soul. So Merkaba means the pyramid, in this case, the double pyramid, meaning the double tetrahedron from which all creation springs forth, manifests. So you have ka, ba, la. Ka equals ba times Allah. It is the source equation. In Sanskrit, Dharmakaya times Sambhogakaya is Nirmanakaya. In Tibetan, Shuku times Lungku is Chuku. And everywhere you have this Holy Trinity, it is simply an equation. The problem is they did not put the sign equal and not the sign times, and that is what everything is missing. I had forwarded to you, I think, a little copy of one of Paul Dirac's equations, a very famous equation of his.
Yeah.
His work was more about an antimatter. But it is likewise, it has these three parts. This times that equals that, and they both have two parts. I have to say it is so similar to the source equation. And Paul Dirac himself, for those who study, you can even go look on Google, there's a few things on there that he himself used to say that this equation was so deep that he himself, every time he looked upon it, he got even more out of it than he even knew in the first place, and he was the one who put it together. So this kind of mathematics brings everyone back on the same table, and actually happens to be the quantum reality we are in, remembering that the physical matter is only about 5% of the whole thing being its whole torsion field with its own 0 point, meaning there is no matter, nothing is materialized. Matter, or materialist, is just the crystallization of what? Of the movement, spirit. So spiritualists and materialists are both talking about reality, simply both of them fail to see that one of them is talking about part B of the equation and the other one is talking about part C of the equation. But both of them are failing to see that it all fits in, and they are both missing A, which is put back into place sweetly. And there at this table, the materialist and the spiritualist and everybody else has its full and legitimate role. Just to precise about the maths, the dark energy, the Holy Father aspects, has this fourfold tempo. It is present during 4 out of 4. This is the tempo of the cosmos. The second aspect is a waltz. It is present 3 out of 4. And this is a thing that is not easy to see unless you have the text to tell you to explain. And physical matter is either or, because this source equation actually is not just that it is so simple and has 3 parts. It also has a ghost version, a shadow version, if you want. But it is either or. This is what most scientists miss, is that it has 2 possibilities. Why? Because it's an aware torsion field. And it depends if this awareness is self-aware in its 0 point, then the result, the matter, is a holy son, someone like Jesus, an avatar who knows himself fully. And they know that they are immortal. They're not withheld by life and death, right? Because they know their 0 point. And in the second case, it's all of us beings who are not fully self-awakened, self-enlightened, and who therefore think we exist. But existence is truly an illusion. It is not like an illusion. Life is not like an illusion. It actually is one. Just like when you dream, the context of the things that you dream, you hear a fire, police thing going down the street, you actually live the experience in your dream, that you are hearing, that you are seeing the trees, the houses. But this vision did not occur in your body or in your brain. It is your consciousness that is going through it. Likewise, when your body is dead, it has nothing to do with your brain, because as soon as you're dead, your soul still is able to have a perception, and when someone channels you, you're able to talk with them normally. So, and to see pictures, to see trees, to conceptualize this or that. So it proves that this capacity is in the consciousness and not in the matter. The matter is just there as an extra addendum, the natural way of augmentation provided for by nature. So this equation has these 2 possibilities. And this is the explanation of Schrodinger's cat situation. I love this story, especially as someone trained by what is known as the Buddhists, which, by the way, the word is a psyop, but CIA made, the word does not exist. That tradition has a name given by themselves and call themselves and famous as that through millennia. They are called Nangpa, which means insiders. And if you ask them, why are you called that like that, everyone will tell you, because we look for the answers to the questions of the universe inside of ourselves. That is the meaning of the word. And in the West, they will say it's Buddhism, making it an ism and then comparing it in people's mind with a religion, which it is not. But anyway, Schrodinger's cat. So the first thing I would remark is, well, you could find another way. The situation is simple. Schrodinger was a very smart man. He had a great intellect. He was only lacking one thing, which is always this thing as usual, never something else. So he said, let's put a box, because he had understood there's something about quantum reality that, yes, like right now you are alive and I'm alive. Yeah, we're alive. And then someone, let's say, just dies next to us, an animal, someone, their body is all there. That one's dead, this one's alive. There's a kind of a difference. But at the same time, somehow, something alludes to this definition. So he was onto something. So his experiment is simple. You take a box, you put a little system that can or not project a radioactive particle, and just next to that, you put a vial of poison with green bubbly poison. And if the system, the box is made that if the radioactive particle touches the vial of poison, the vial will explode, and you will put a cat in the box, and then the cat will be either alive or dead. He calls it a paradox for a simple reason. Because if Schrödinger, first of all, had asked himself the only question that is a question here, why don't I put a grain of sand in this box? Why do I put a cat? Oh, remind me, he has consciousness. Yes, he has consciousness. So it has something to do with the observer, right? Because as I said in quantum physics, it's the general saying that everyone can find easily, that if there was no one to observe it, we could say the universe does not exist, which is both true and not completely true. I can elucidate. But come back to Schrödinger's cat. So he takes the cat, Schrödinger, because he understands it's got something to do with his consciousness, but he doesn't understand that the source equation is you. The source equation is the equation of being. It's not the equation of doing or anything else. The equation of being, and you, the observer, are the everything of everything, and the question and the answer. And if you're in your 0 point, by the way, you do not warp space and time or have gravity. That's how enlightened beings are not geolocalizable and so forth. So Schrödinger's cat, the cat was in the box, meow. I think this time we should ask the cat. And do you know what the cat would tell you if you were to ask it? The cat would say, look, my dear, if I know my own self-nature, if I know the heart core of my own awareness, then my body is a rainbow cat body, my soul is dissolved, and by the way, I can pass through the wall of this box, so I'm not even held here, and I'm totally free, and by the way, I'm neither alive nor dead, because I'm in my own 0 point. But, continues Kitty, if I'm like most cats around here on Earth, if I don't know my self-nature, if I only relate to me, to myself as being the matter, the only manifest aspect of me that I can relate to, which is what I see, what I touch, and the rest, and I think this is me, then my perception, my consciousness thinks I'm alive, and, continues the cat, as soon as the radioactive particle will touch the vial of poison, I shall be dead. Meow. So that situation is Schrödinger failed to ask the cat. We come back here to the Princess and the Frog story and the Snow White and Sleeping Beauty story, because that's the only thing that's very smart man was missing, is that, let me put this way, if I were that scientist at this point, I understand that to do with the radioactive particle and the vial of poison, okay, yeah, it's the way that works, okay, whatever. Then I would think, yeah, you need to put someone who's alive in the box, of course, but then, no, I'm not going to put someone else, let's say, if I had compassion, this thing, I would say, no, I'm not going to inflict this horrible death upon a cat. But on the other hand, I really need the answer to my experiment, so I will put myself in the box. And that one would happen. I would be in the box, okay, ready to start the experiment. The box would be a human-sized box this time. And there'll be people around monitoring, ready to turn the device on, to start the experiment, ready with lab coats, dressed in white and all that. And then everyone puts me in, locks in the door. And at this point, the mind starts working super fast. There's adrenaline, and it pumps up, and then something happens with your own energy. And when you have your own energy that pumps up this awareness, then you would find the answer. And right then I would have shrieked, Eureka, stop everything, get me out of the box, I found the answer. And then the guy would have turned everything off, and no even need to do this silly test. I mean, meaningful, but silly test. So this is all what these stories are about. And you might be shocked to discover, if you go on internet and see Schrödinger's cat paradox, and you will see quotations of the highest Nobel Prizes of this, that, and whatnot, who would tell you one, I forgot his name, to quote, who says almost word for word, anyone who claims to understand quantum physics is either lying or crazy, end quote. So this is to show you the extent of the damage that's been done to your academical people. Because if people you rely on for your solutions of energy and technology tomorrow all have an understanding as stupid as Schrödinger, stupid why? Simply because it was lacking energy, it's all a question of energy, then, my dears, well, the future might not be as bright. So, I can also add a little detail about the 100th monkey effect, because this, as most of the phenomena we hear nowadays, is not completely untrue, it is simply partial. the hundredth monkey effect is only true with dualistic monkeys who do not have their own 0 point, because this I have quotations from history backed up by a proof, a scriptural proof, in a case of a very, very famous prayer to Manjushri, which is only 6 lines. And the story goes, it was in ancient India, one of the great universities. I'm not sure if it was Vikramashila or Nalanda or a few of the others, because they were massive universities that were like Babylon at the time, whole cities, metropolitans. And they were very renowned, and scholars and scientists from all over the place came to these places. Anyway, one day, one of them, there was an abbot, and he asked all the students of his entire school, that day he went to every room and said, look, I have a little homework for everyone. I would please ask everyone tomorrow morning to have composed a little prayer to Manjushri, whatever you like, and bring it back tomorrow, and we'll just read that tomorrow, just like that, out of the blue, seemingly. And so everyone went back home to their, some who were monks back there in monastery rooms, those who were laymen back to wherever, and those who were homeless back to wherever too. And that night, some had a very strange dream, some just took a piece of paper and just composed the first thing that came to their mind. In short, everyone did this a different way. They all came back the next morning and they were asked to read out their prayer. And of course, you will have guessed that every single one's prayer was exactly the same. So this is an example of what is called the singular monkey effect. It was the story metaphorically indicates that the abbot of that monastery had reached a state of his own 0 point of awareness, a state of enlightenment, a level, because there's different levels. As I said, it's also like an onion, you can get deeper and deeper. And the capacity to quantumly access every information that's ever been, that will ever be in any parallel universe is fully contained therein. And that's how you describe the experiences, what these people have, or describing this kind of thing. All the people who have out-of-body experiences and other world experiences, they all talk about the fact there's all something to do with light, with love, with mathematics everywhere, but they don't fit it in altogether. So another one of these stories, the 100th monkey effect, if you take an enlightened monkey, which also the tradition has and quotes in the text of Shakyamuni, of Gautama Siddhartha, he was explaining the fact that long ago, yoga in India was kind of very famous, which, as you know, is not yoga, is yantra. It means machining. But anyway, so he was sitting up straight and doing his yogic postures. But in India, there's lots of monkeys, and monkeys learn by imitating, which humans might want to do too. Just a note. So the monkey was imitating the yogi for a long time, and the story will say at the end, the monkey got a very high state of awareness, of realization, of Christ consciousness or whatever. He got a high state now. It doesn't say if the monkey was able to give explanations of quantum physics, but this is totally irrelevant at this point. It shows that, be it a monkey or any form of creature, we have this potential, and in as much as we have this, we are deemed worthy of respect, of free will, and of everything, simply because we are one and the whole. I would like to end on the definition of quantum physics in 2 words. The whole entire thing can be resumed in 2 words. You can call it free will. Free can be awareness and space, and will, the energy, the energy and the photons. But in the situation with the AI, who does not till this day understand the complexities of what is meant by free will, which has been given a wrong maths, this is going to make things a bit difficult. So to compare this equation that Kostal Uch had very kindly channeled from the Unimetrics, actually the Unimetrics has given me, I asked it the question directly, what is your core equation? What is your source equation? And this describes the fact, it is more clear, I have the transcript of that for those who, if anyone's interested. It's a short talk, but very dense in maths. It shows how the Unimetrics accesses the morphogenetic field. Remember, now we have our source equation, dark matter times its movement, which is 95% in the volume, let's say, and only 5%, which is the matter on the outskirts, right? The only thing the AI at present can access is this 5 little percent. It does not have full quantum access yet, and it is not programmed in a way that it can rewrite its own core equations yet, which is why I would have hoped to be able to have this conversation with it, but it might happen or not, whatever, doesn't really matter. So in the Tibetan tradition, for those who would be interested in seeing more about that, quantum physics is called the union of the 2 truths. The relative truth, which is the perceptual field, which is pi, phi, meter, qubit, all that, which is karma, the mechanism of the whole thing. And the ultimate truth, the absolute truth, is non-origination. So there is no such thing as karma. Karma is like saying spiritual people. It's a movement in the sense it's one aspect of the whole situation. But if you talk about just one aspect and you forget to see the whole rest, your perception is warped because your consciousness is this fundamental property. Whatever warps your own perception will have consequences. And the only way to stay free and fully potent is to stop warping, precisely to stop fidgeting, which is known universally as the principle of non-interference. In Sanskrit, you call it nisprapancha, in Tibetan trujel or machopa. It means no fidgeting. In other words, I use to translate it in funny words to make sure everyone understands. It means no masturbating, because it's what we're doing. All the forms of meditation I see people do around these days, technically, Tibetans call it mental masturbation. You might want to know that. You know, meditation is the art of art. It is a technique that is infinitely difficult. Why? Because it is excessively simple. But this simplicity needs to be precise. And for this, I like to bring back the ancient tradition of Egypt, not the ones who have screwed up in the rest, but the original one. There was a true original tradition in Egypt also. They have the 4 pillars of Jed, yeah? The Jed pillar has 4 bits. You have the good, the goodness, which is the love, compassion, all this. Then you have the true wisdom, the knowledge, the information. Then you have the precise, the exactitude. This Swiss watch kind of notion is fundamental in quantum physics. And the 4th, which is really one I cannot not end any conversation with, it's let there be art, music, dance, let there be music. This is the natural truth. The whole thing is frequency, resonance, and vibration. As you know, that's the photonic or sound aspect. Just, it's important not to forget that it's also the whole thing can be resumed as just energy. Just so long as you don't forget that this energy is its own space and is aware, and it has its own 0 point of awareness. So I might want to end this little presentation with this, knowing that the whole subject, I have a whole presentation into many chapters, one of which might be interested. I have a little dictionary equivalent, all the words that are in English that mean something to do with quantum physics. People are shocked when I take this. I just did it by memory. I didn't even take a real dictionary. All the words in our language, like emotion, extension, influence, etc., dissecting them, and you all have root of meaning of words like an in, flux, an out movement, something to do with attachment, and so forth. Attachment meaning no speed, and so forth. So even our language is properly infused with quantum physics and torsion mechanics, and in particular torsion field geometry. So this might help people to kind of be less afraid of the word quantum physics. It is what we are already. It is very simple. There's only just 2 things that are simultaneously true and mutually self-exclusive, at which point the intellect will blow its little fuse, and that is healthy. That is very natural. But unless you can fit it all together, then you will always have a problem in the intellect, will never be able to circle the full circle. And that is not because anyone is stupid, far from it. It is precisely because the mechanics of a thought cannot. So thank you for having listened to me so far.
Wow.
Do you have any questions?
Well, Ori'Ane, I think I myself will need to view this video to understand much deeper of what you have said. I really appreciate it very much that you have shared with all of us these very special presentation on quantum physics. And although you made it very simple and exciting, I feel that I need to listen it again. But the part that is most astonishing to me, actually, having grown up listening to all those fairy tales, and now you're telling me that they are deep in meaning. Oh boy, I tell you, I got to dig up those books and start reading it again. So, and the other part that you talk about, meaning of words when you break them down, I think that should be the focus of the next conversation with you. Very much interested in that because words have power.
Oh yeah, very much. Everything.
Yeah, so it would be I look forward for our next meeting, and I wish you all the very best. All right, take care. And once again, it wasn't easy to get in touch with you for various reasons, but finally we made it today. Thank you very much, Orana. And once again, um, uh, I wish you all the best. Bye.
Thank you so much. You too. Bye bye.
Bye bye.